Good evening, everybody. Welcome into our Milford TV studios as we bring you live election night coverage here on Milford Town Election Night 2024. I am Milford TV Executive Director Tim Coet, joined once again on another election night by my intrepid co-host and longtime Milford TV member, Al Correa. Al, welcome into the show. Happy to have you with me for another year.
Glad to be here. I just wish we had had a better turnout tonight.
It tends to be the theme of a lot of our conversation here, and we'll delve into some of the details on turnout that we have been getting reports on over the course of the day here today. Of course, polls just closed a minute ago here in Milford, polls closing at 8 p.m. And right now we have Milford TV staff out at all three of Milford's polling locations. So as soon as results are posted throughout the night here tonight, we'll start to bring you the results precinct by precinct until we are able to get you your projected winners. And so before we go any further, let's just remind everyone of the contested races that we'll be keeping an eye on over the course of the night here tonight. Not a ton of contested races on the ballot this year, as you can see, but these are the races that we'll be taking a look at. Of course, the big one that drew a lot of people out to the polls today is once again a contested race for school committee. 3 incumbents involved in that race: Meghan Hornberger, Christopher Wilson, and Matthew Zacchilli, with newcomer to the race Gregory Allegrezza as a challenger. Also a contested race for the Board of Health with Lorian Braza, Diana Haynes, and Charles Scaff, all vying for 1 seat on the Milford Board of Health. And another race that we'll be keeping an eye on is the 1 contested seat for the trustees of the Vernon Grove Cemetery, where you have a couple of contestants there in that race as well. In particular, Paul Bosclair and Jason Vaz, who are competing for 1 seat. That's a 1-year term on the Vernon Grove trustees. So those are the contested races that we'll be keeping an eye on tonight. And you know the drill. If you've tuned into our election night coverage in seasons past, we'll be keeping a running tally via our very high-tech Google Sheet for you. We'll give you a sneak preview of what we'll be showing you as the results start to come in here, as we'll bring that up on your screen right now. Typical to what you've seen in election years past. So as those precincts start to report in, we'll start to populate that list. We'll get an overall total all the way to your right, and so we'll start to see those results populate. I'm guessing probably within the next 10 to 15 minutes or so. I have a feeling those results will start to get posted pretty quickly over at the Senior Center, Italian Vets, and the Portuguese Club. So Al, bringing you into the conversation, as always, you did such a great job here on Milford TV, talking to a lot of the candidates leading up to election night. You were able to interview all of the candidates for school committee individually. You had them on board for a candidates night. What were some of your takeaways for this election season in terms of school committee?
It was interesting because there wasn't a breakout candidate. You know, years have gone by where we'll have 2 or 3 similar candidates and one totally different outlook, different view, different perception. All 4 seemed to be very close in their ideas. You had a very tough decision this year, you know, because a lot of times you have people with large Milford-based families. They just about all did. You have people who have been involved or haven't been involved in the school. They just about all have. You know, 3 out of 4 of the candidates are incumbents. And there wasn't a lot of controversy in their opinions or their beliefs. Now, I feel for the newcomer, Greg Allegrezza, because he's taken on 3 very entrenched candidates. I mean, he comes from a solid Milford family, but so don't 2 of the others. And the third comes from many, many years of helping different aspects of Milford life. So it was interesting. The sad part is, am I right in that just before 7 o'clock there was 8% turnout? Yeah,
so that we were able to get a report from the town clerk's office that as of 5 p.m., they were able to calculate 1,646 voters had made their way out to the polls out of 18,250 registered voters here in the town of Milford. So you do the math, it comes out to roughly 8% voter turnout as of 5 p.m. So again, there were 3 hours there still to go. I'm sure there was probably a little bit of a rush at the polls for folks getting out of work for the day, but That's sort of the number that we've been stuck at, Al, right around that 8% window. Maybe we've been lucky to get up to 10%. Maybe we've hovered around 9%, but it's been that 8 to 10% threshold of voter turnout the last couple of years. And it just continues to bring up the question year after year, what is it going to take to start to get the voter base here in Milford re-energized and taking a little bit more of an active role in their local government?
Well, if you remember the last time we had substantial turnout, it was the casino. There was an issue that whether you were pro-casino or against the casino, everybody had an opinion. And everybody knew their opinion was the correct one. Since then, I don't remember a strong turnout. And yet, you know, people complain about the price of housing, their investment in their houses. And there's no greater factor than the school committee. You know, because when you think about it, if you've got children, or even if you don't have children, you're looking for an investment, because a house, especially at the prices now in Milford, a house is a substantial investment for just about everybody. And what's the first thing that people look at? How is the school system? So it amazes me that more people don't turn out. I mean, 1,600 people? That's disappointing.
And another thing that we obviously talk about, Al, is that it seems to be that in years past when we have gotten higher voter turnout outside of the year with the casino, it's been when we've had a race for a select board seat, a contested select board seat. That's something that now, this is our 4th year in a row where we've had an uncontested race for the select board. Does that give you a sense that there's a level of maybe content within the community for how the government is being run, that you're not getting folks out into these races and then in turn you're not getting as many people to the polls? I've been to enough town meetings and I've been to enough candidate forums where there's some voices of dissent out there. There's people with varying opinions, but that's not, it seems like we're not getting that channeled into folks coming out and getting involved in these races. So where do you kind of see the political landscape overall here in Milford?
I think a lot of it is we're a victim of our own success, because 20 plus years ago when I got on the finance committee, I was asked 3 questions by residents. Are you raising, well, now 2.5 limit? Well, we haven't raised to the 2.5 limit in a long time. Are you funding the capital projects we need? Now, I have to admit, I'm biased, being chairman of the capital subcommittee, but I don't remember one project turned down in this town in the last couple decades because of funding. So I'd say yes. And 3, do we have a surplus this year? And this will be 16 years straight of a surplus. Now it's getting tighter and tighter because we've got, you know, when you look at the fleet we carry, the schools, we've got 5 schools in our fleet. The aircraft carrier is the high school. And you start looking at what the costs have been. In Franklin, Tri-County came in at $288 million to build a new school. Down in Haverhill, they wanted $450, which caused some issues. But you start thinking about everything you put into your decision, and the school comes out. Now we've got 4 good candidates, 3 proven. So that's something you can say doesn't really cause agita, doesn't cause people to be nervous. You can say we've had a track record for years. I mean, we did Brookside without touching our stabilization account. Woodland, $60 million. We expected we're going to have to hit stabilization. We didn't. Now, for the high school, God help us. If we're lucky and we hit $180 million for renovation, that's still going to be, you know, 60% of that, 40% from the state. It's still going to be a lot of money and probably $7-ish million in interest a year. So it's going to be tough. This year especially, I was amazed. I'll give credit where credit's due. Our governor had said they weren't going to touch Chapter 70 money, the money that goes to funding our schools. Well, not only didn't they cut it back, they held it to 4%. Now, 4% seems like a lot when you got an inflation of 2.5%, but when inflation's 8-9%, it's a scary number. We went in to the school committee meeting, and I expected some pushback because their original budget request was 18% increase. Now, not official, but it was their working model. And Kevin McIntyre and Chris Wilson started out saying, we know that we've benefited the last 3 years heavily from Chapter 70 going up 7 million incremental a year. And we know that this year we don't have it. It's only going up 4% total. So they said they wanted to be good corporate citizens, good town citizens, and not push it this year. And sure enough, I mean, Mike Nicholson, who's the subcommittee chair, was there to represent the FinCom, and we decided we weren't going to play games. Budget's going up 4% overall. The school department, we told them we could go up to 6.5%, which is 50% more than the mean, but a lot of money, and a lot less than the 18% they had hoped. But they came back and said, look, we're doing a budget that comes in at about 7.5%. And that says a lot, because when you're first starting talking about issues and budgets, people are always, we've been at town meeting, people sit there and say, I'm amazed there's no controversy at town meeting. No, because we started in March, and by the time May rolls around, we've beaten each other up so much that there is no controversy. But I was amazed that the FinCom said it could start and end at 6.5%. No games, no theatrics, just it is what it is. That's what we can afford. And the school committee came back and said, well, they're at 7.5%. So the whole negotiation was over 1%. Now, 1% of the school budget of $70 million is $700,000. So
it's not a small amount.
No, you know, it's not like you're talking about some of the small departments, the one-person departments that are living on, you know, 60, 70 grand a year. But they came down. They hit 6.48%. You can't ask for better cooperation.
Yeah, certainly hard work from that committee, and that kind of takes it back to a point that you were making at the beginning. And again, just to reset things quickly for folks who might just be tuning in, we're awaiting results from the 3 polling locations for the contested races on this year's ballot. So we have not yet gotten any of those results in. From what I understand, it's not exactly the best weather conditions to stand outside and wait for polling results with some heavy rains coming through the area here right at an inopportune time. But we'll get those numbers to you as soon as they are available. So in the meantime, just kind of going over some key information from this election season. So you brought up the point earlier, tricky to break into a race as a challenger when you've got incumbents in the race. And I know in years past you've talked about, well, sometimes as an incumbent, you've got 50% of people who are going to vote for you no matter what because they recognize your name, and 50% that are not going to vote for you because they recognize.
Typically 400 or 500 votes as an incumbent.
Yeah.
Because I recognize the name. I may not know you from a hole in the ground, but I've heard the name Cowett. Okay. But you lose 400 to 500 because some people just want change. You know, and you look around when people have come in and said, well, we need to improve. I agree. I don't know how much more we can improve. But my basic question is, pick one town around us that you would trade Milford's financial status with theirs. Can't find one. You know, we still, in my mind, bring the best value of all towns. You know, things we take for granted. Leaf pickup. There is something nice about pushing the leaves down the bottom of the driveway and having Scotty and his crew come by and make them disappear. Trash pickup. There is something that we take for granted, that you can put out one large item, and we're about the only ones left that do that. I remember when my daughter was in Worcester at school, she brought trash home. And I looked, I said, "What's with the trash?" "Dad, it's $3 for these little designer trash bags." And if you go down and Stop and Shop, you'll see different towns. They've got the little trash bags.
I live in Worcester. I'm one of those people. I know exactly what you're talking about.
You know, so you start looking, and it's getting tougher and tougher. Yeah. We haven't settled the budget yet, and one of the big items is trash. Because for years and years, we actually made money on our recycle. Today, the dilemma is, I've got a bottle. I'm done with it. I know that if I put it in the recycle bin, it's good for planet Earth. But it costs me 30% more to put it in the recycle bin as a Milfordian than if I throw it in my trash. Okay, do I do what's best for Milford, or do I do what's best for the planet? And a lot of people have to think through it, and you default to still putting out our recycle. But ever since China changed their policy, they used to take 90% or more of our recycle, but then they came back with a rule that said it can't be more than 5% contaminated, or they don't want it anymore. That's one pizza box in a dumpster. Mm-hmm. Or in a trash bin. You know, it gets tougher and tougher as you have to start looking at trash removal going up 10, 15, 20% and over a 2-year contract. And what option do you have? You know, we fought for years that we didn't want the single trash, single container for recycle. I'm dead against it, because come Christmas, come graduation parties, all of a sudden that one barrel just isn't enough. And a lot of people don't look at it, they call it a fee. In my mind, when somebody's putting their hand in my pocket and taking money out, it's a tax. So we're looking for bids, and one of the questions we asked our health manager is, could you find out what it costs with and without the single stream containers? We haven't gotten an answer back yet. It may be that as hard as we try, we're going to have to live with 90 unit recycle and a 60-gallon trash. It's a big difference from Milford if you're having a graduation party, or when you have the whole family over for Christmas and you look at bag after bag. You know, if I had to take those big bags of wrapping paper and all and put them in the little Worcester designer trash bin.
It's not a fun game. It's not a fun game. But so clearly that's an issue that whoever emerges from our Board of Health race here tonight is going to be a part of moving forward with those discussions.
And that's a big change, because we always joked that Paul Zacchilli, good Milford boy from the Heights, ex-mayor of the Heights, he was the youngest serving Board of Health member, because he was only on there for 30 years. Everybody else was 35 and 40 years. So you had incredible longevity. You had a very deep, deep base of knowledge. New people coming in are going to have a tougher time, because they haven't been on the board for 3 decades. But again, I'm disappointed. Amy made it so easy, the town clerk's office, Amy Neves. When you call up and say, I'm not going to be in town this year, can I have an absentee ballot? That was it. All I had to do was send in a note. I got my absentee ballot, I filled it in, mailed it back. But it turns out I could have been here today anyway. But I didn't want to take a chance. We're talking at 5 o'clock, 1,600 people. Guys, please, vote for yourselves. Pick somebody who you believe will spend our money and educate our children to the best of your expectations. It's $70 million is the school budget this year. My God, it's hard to believe. When I was a kid, you could have bought Milford for $70 million. For $70 million, they would have thrown in Hopedale and Mendon. But you know, you start looking and you say, what else can you do? You know, the select board is always the one that people say, well, that has the biggest influence. Well, first of all, both boards are elected, so they share equal power. You know, everybody believes that the school committee would have to report to the select board. They do because they're good Milford people. But technically, they could go to town meeting without going to the finance committee, select board. I mean, you got to remember, this is funny, after being on it for over 20 years, the finance committee, in my thought, are the most influential, powerless people in town hall. When you look at the whole board, the whole finance committee gets 1 vote out of 200. So we look at ourselves as the glue to bring all these budgets together. Because I was recently told I don't have to go in front of the FinCom. I can go right to town meeting. And technically, the elected officials all can. But can you imagine if Scotty Cristofolio on Highway ignored how the town is doing and just put together his budget? And all he'd have to say is, okay, Tim, vote against me. Cut the funding for redoing your street. You can live with potholes. If the school committee said, this is what we need because of the influx of children. I mean, for 40 years, I poked fun at the previous superintendent, saying you're averaging 1 extra student per year. How is it you need all this extra space for 1 kid per year? Because when the school, Milford High, opened up, first graduating class was 1974. 220 classmates of mine. We all graduated in 74. 40 years later, we're at 262. It's 1 kid per year. And then the immigration wave hit. And we started adding 200 children a year. I mean, to put it in perspective, Memorial School holds 300. So in a year and a half, you basically filled Memorial School again.
That's amazing.
So, you know, again, how the money is spent is going to influence our taxes. It's going to influence the future of our children. So I'm not taking anything away from the select board because they do an incredibly important job. But the school committee, I mean, anybody who's had kids, by high school, you're fighting to get an hour a night with your children because they've got sports, they've got drama, they've got all these things that keep them busy, plus they're being teenagers. The school committee influences 6 to 7 hours a day of each child's life. How can you have a more important role than that?
It's a really important point to make, and so I mean we do every year talk about select board races do tend to draw out the highest percentage of voters, but it really is important to hammer that point home that every single municipal board in this town makes important decisions. The school committee is certainly an integral force here in town, certainly for tax dollar perspective. So it's really important for members of the community out there to get educated on these races when it comes to the local election season and participate in the process. And so with that, we are starting to get some results in now. We got our first results in from the Portuguese Club. So we've got 4 precincts on the board already. So we can take a look at those individual numbers precinct by precinct in just a bit. But right now we have precincts 4, 5, 7, and 8 all in reporting unofficial numbers. So if we take it all the way to the overall totals to start, we can see right now that our leading vote getter in the school committee race is incumbent Matthew Zacchilli with 653 votes. That is followed by Meghan Hornberger with 594 votes. Christopher Wilson in the 3rd place position right now with 539 votes. And then challenger Gregory Allegrezza right there in the neighborhood with 4 precincts in at 528 votes. So you can see there just an 11 vote difference right now between Allegrezza and Wilson for that 3rd seat. Again, 3 seats up for grabs, 3 incumbents, 1 challenger. So there's only going to be 1 person out of the mix here when all is said and done. So that'll certainly be interesting as we continue to get additional numbers in there. And just quickly to go through the numbers for Board of Health, right now with 4 precincts reporting, we have Lorianne Braza as the leading vote getter with 481 votes. Diana Haynes in the 2nd place position with 348 votes. And then Charles Scaff right now with 107 votes. And then for the contested race on the trustees of Vernon Grove Cemetery, it's right now Paul Bosclair with the top vote number there right now. So we'll get some additional numbers in momentarily. It looks like we are getting some of the other precincts in. And so right now, it looks like we're having a bit of an issue over at the Senior Center where there are not numbers being posted right now. But we'll see, we are getting some numbers in from Italian Vets, so we'll start to get those populated as well. But right now, no tapes out on the door for the Senior Center. So we'll keep an eye out on there to see if we can get some numbers there. That's highly unusual. But right now, Al, with 4 precincts in, definitely a tight race for school committee, and it looks like we're about to get our Italian Vets numbers added into the mix.
That'll be an interesting mix, because when you look at, let's see if we can bring back the spreadsheet, and you start looking at what has already been posted, it's the newest side of Milford. You know, you don't have yet precincts 1, 2, that's the older voters of Milford, the more traditional Milfordians. But if you start looking, 11 votes for a first-time candidate, that's incredible. I mean, it scares me when I remember when we had, oh God, it must be 4 or 5 years ago, we had 7 precincts in out of 8, and I won't mention the names, but 7 out of 8, and one candidate was up by, I think, 14 votes. Precinct 8 came in, and 27 vote swing the other way. So a candidate lost over 12 or 13 votes total. Just amazed me, because when people say my vote doesn't matter, well, here you're looking at 11 votes separate out a candidate. 11 votes separate out somebody who's going to be controlling the largest budget in the town of Milford.
It's definitely going to be tight. So if we can pull our spreadsheet back up on the screen right now, we do have our results in from the Italian Vets. So now we have 6 of the 8 precincts reporting in. And so again, let's take a look at those overall totals all the way to the right-hand side of your screen. So it continues to be Matthew Zacchilli as the overall vote leader with 817 votes. Right now, Meghan Hornberger in that 2nd place position with 707 votes. And you can see right here, we have had a flip for that 3rd seat, as right now Gregory Allegrezza has pulled ahead of Christopher Wilson with 683 votes for Allegrezza, 657 votes for Christopher Wilson. So right now the incumbent with a strong showing with 6 precincts in, right now hanging on to one of those 3 seats with 6 precincts reporting in. And as we continue to go through the line, no real change in our other two races, as right now it looks like Lorianne Braza hanging on to the lead for Board of Health with 595 total votes, and Paul Bosclair leading for that contested seat on the trustees of Vernon Grove Cemetery. So again, we'll continue to effort to get results from the Senior Center. Again, from our poll watcher over at the Senior Center, everything was closed up and there were no votes posted on the door, so we're going to try to get over to Town Hall to see if we can get some results over there. And so certainly adding a layer of intrigue to the night, Al, is right now we've seen a change in position right now, and so the challenger and again, what we talked about just a few minutes ago, a year where we thought maybe this would be a very favorable year for incumbents in a race like this, but a very strong showing so far for Allegrezza.
You've got the whole family issue coming in. I mean, 3 candidates have strong familial ties in Milford. And in a big family, especially when you have 1,600 whole votes, that can make a difference. You know, even now with the swing, you're talking a 30-vote differential. That can quickly change.
Yeah, so again, we'll continue to hang around as again, we've got boots on the ground out around the community trying to get those numbers in. The last couple of years, we've been able to put folks out at the polling locations to get those numbers quick, but a little bit different over at the Senior Center this year. So we will, again, continue to effort to get those results as we go. But right now, just a razor-thin margin there between Gregory Allegrezza and Christopher Wilson. Right now, it's a 26-vote difference between a spot on the school committee and being on the outside looking in of that four contested race. And interesting for perhaps, you know, Chris Wilson, for good reasons and bad reasons, really the face of the school committee right now as the chair, making all of those tough decisions. I'm not sure if that puts him in a position to be more, again, of that sort of focus, as you mentioned, from the community, where maybe people who want change, that's the name to go after. But I mean, we've certainly seen Chris doing incredible work in what's been a really challenging couple of years to navigate on the school committee.
I'll say something that'll probably get me in trouble, but if Chris Wilson is not getting the votes, I think it's more that they're voting for Greg Allegrezza, not against Chris Wilson. Because if you look at his tenure as a school committee chair, he's been one of, not that the ones before him weren't, but he's been one of the most responsive and sensitive to financial needs. I know I got calls all the time when there was a problem coming. You know, so from that end, I can't think of one thing to say, oh my God, this guy did this, and that hurt him. I mean, there's always going to be, when you're the top spender in the town, there's always going to be people who blame you. You know, or for not, I would say there's probably getting as many people telling him he's not spending enough. You know, I'd be amazed if he didn't get criticized privately, saying, you should have fought the FinCom. You should have gone for an override. You should have gone and gotten more money. But there's only so much you can do.
Yeah.
You know, so I think it's not surprising, because Greg Allegrezza in the interviews did well. Level, Milford-oriented, strong ties to Milford, to the kids. I mean, you know, when you think of Allegrezza, we joked even on the show about his family member, Nello Allegrezza, who was our science teacher. We got new technology in the high school when it opened. We had rotary phones in every classroom. And one of the famous lines was, Mr. Allegrezza would always pick up the phone, hello, Nello, and it just stuck with us. So many people remember the Allegrezzas, the Zacchillis. You think about the Zacchilli family and the wonderful contribution they've made. You know, the Holland family. I mean, it's all these Milford ties. So this is just one old man's opinion, but I don't think anybody's voting against anybody in this race.
No, and that's really a great way to look at it too. And I think maybe one interesting thing, and if folks had a chance to check out the Citizens for Milford Candidate Forum that we worked on a couple of weeks back, I think that was a situation where you had three incumbents that were very much in lockstep with a lot of their answers, and so perhaps that is an avenue for an outside candidate like Gregory Allegrezza to stand out a little bit more amongst the voters who were there live, who were watching at home, who have watched in the weeks since, to hear somebody with different ideas, a different point of view, and perhaps that can be a situation where being the outsider, not being the incumbent, can give you an opportunity to gain a little bit more traction.
I would agree with you, except for the fact that Greg didn't feel like an outsider. When you looked at what he talked about, what he wanted to accomplish, it was very much in lockstep with everybody. Now, I'm sure there's nuances that he'll want to change if he becomes a school committee member. But we've had candidates on the show that have come out and said they believe that Milford puts out less than a competitive education. It's like, whoa. I mean, you can't get more diametrically opposed of a view than that with the current school committee people. None of that. I didn't see it. And that's why I really believe this was who am I voting for, not who am I voting against.
And it's nice to see that there is still a feel like that to local politics. I think as the years go on, and we're obviously in a presidential election year, things have never been so tribal as they are right now when you get to politics at the national level. And you wonder year after year, is that going to slowly have that trickle-down effect where you are going to start to see that type of thing even down to your local elections? And right now it still feels as though whether you're a Democrat, whether you're a Republican, that doesn't seem to really be factoring in very heavily to how Milford residents are making their decisions.
The people.
Right.
One of the things, when you hear all politics is local, why? Because I remember when John Fernandez was running for the Mass House, and some not so pleasant things were said about him. Well, my mother looked and said, why are they talking bad about John? She knew him. She knew he was a good man. She valued him. So if you talk against him, negative politics tends to work against you in Milford. And as much as I think Milford is special, I think it's a similar outlook in all small towns. You can make fun of a Washington politician, and you don't really know if what they're saying is true or not, because you don't know the person. But, to my mother, John was still 31. And you had to grow up in the Heights where I was 8. Joe Duke was 19. 110 was Domingos Rhoda. You never said anything like it's the Rhoda family, it's 110. Everybody knew you from what house in the Heights you came from. So after you grow up the whole time, whether you knew John or not from a political point of view, you grew up with him. You knew him. So if somebody said something negative, right away you start questioning the motives, because this isn't a bad guy. And sure enough, I think that was what helped put him over the top to win that year, is that he never did go negative.
Yeah, there's a lot of dehumanizing that goes on with our politics at the national level, and so it's, again, just comforting to see in these sort of local elections that there are really still those ties where everyone knows each other as people first, and that's driving a lot of these decisions, and you hope that it just continues to be like that, at least at the local level, given what we're seeing at the national level. So again, just to quickly do a reset here for you as we're creeping past 8:39 now in the evening. The polls have been closed for coming up on 40 minutes, so we'll throw the results that we have for you back on the screen right now. We have 6 precincts reporting. And where we're at right now is we're looking at 2 incumbents in position to be reelected, with 6 precincts in. Matthew Zacchilli, the leading vote getter, Meghan Hornberger right now with the 2nd highest vote total, and it is the challenger, Gregory Allegrezza, right now in that 3rd place position with Chris Wilson just 26 votes behind. And so right now we're waiting for the final 2 precincts. We're waiting for Precinct 1 and Precinct 6. Those are the precincts represented by the Milford Senior Center. We weren't able to get numbers at the Senior Center as the rolls were not posted, but just really quickly, I want to give huge kudos to our outgoing community event coordinator, Jerry Maglita. This is quite literally Jerry's last day on the job with us here at Milford TV, moving on to a new career opportunity, but he was gracious enough to come back one last time to help us out with the election coverage. We started him out at Italian Vets. He brought us the numbers there. He made a quick swing down to the Senior Center and is now right now in the room where the votes are being read aloud at Town Hall. So as soon as he has those numbers from the Senior Center, from those final 2 precincts, he'll bring them to us. So I just want to acknowledge Jerry, who's been with us on the staff since 2018, has been an absolutely invaluable member of our staff, helping provide coverage of countless municipal meetings and countless other events around the community, and being a real asset to our studio as well. And so he will get those numbers to us shortly.
But Tim, your whole staff, I mean, when you look at what we pay these people, it's not overpayment. They're not making huge salaries. Yet Jerry, Patrick, Dominique, even now she had to bring in Mr. Dominique to help her out. They're there at night. They're there for select board meetings, for FinCom meetings, for school committee meetings. Tonight they're out in the rain. Yeah, and by the way, we should send out a bat signal to Amy saying, save us, give us the last 2 results.
So I'm sure that those will be coming in very shortly. But yeah, I mean, just a great opportunity to kind of take a pause in the action, and again, just to acknowledge the staff. And I certainly appreciate you saying that, Al, and I echo those sentiments wholeheartedly. When we have this election night coverage, it's an opportunity for us to bring our entire staff together on a production. And so right now we have our member services coordinator, Dominique Champa, along with Patrick Garapi, who is helping out in our control room right now. Jerry, as we mentioned, is out in the rain, battling the inclement weather out there to try to get those last 2 precincts for us. And we have Devere Blander helping out as well, volunteering his time to bring us the election results as well. And we have our brand new intern, her first day with us today from Sutton High School, Sophia, who is helping out in our control room as well. So we have an outstanding team working extremely hard here tonight, as they do each and every day, to continue to bring quality programming here to the Milford community. And
but again, Jerome, as I call him, it's the last day. Okay, your last day of employment, we're going to ask you to go stand out in the rain, run between buildings in the rain and the cold. And then once you're done, we're going to say thank you, goodbye. There's something special about all the staff. There's something special about the people who run our departments. Because you always get the question, how come you don't have the big fights in Milford? You know, you see different towns, school committee battling, the select board battling, the town manager battling. We keep our battles in private, because at the subcommittee meetings or at the school committee meetings, there's a lot of disagreements. I mean, every year we start off with the FinCom coming in saying, we're destitute, we're broke. And the school committee saying, all we need is $9 billion increase in funding. And then we all laugh and decide, what is it that we want? We all want more, but what is it we can afford? And it works. It's the same thing as Jerry running around in the rain his last 5 minutes of employment. Actually, since he's on salary, he's not being paid for this. But that's what makes Milford and little towns like Milford special.
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. And so, I mean, I can't say enough about the team that we have here at Milford TV for sure. And really, it can be said across the board for while we're not officially a Milford entity, we're a nonprofit, but we're certainly embedded heavily in the town. But all of the town departments, people are committed to this town. People are committed to the work in this town. And that's certainly been a big part of why I've continued to be here now. This is my 10th year of working here in the community. It's a place where people care.
What would be the difference, candidly, between if you were an official department of the town versus 99.999% funded by the residents of the town? It's not like the select board's going to censor you or dictate what you do.
Sure.
It's not like you're not going to do things for the town because it's the right thing to do, even if it's sending Jerry out after he's completed his employment in the rain. This is Milford. As much as we laugh and joke about it, there's something special about this town. You don't have to agree with everybody. I mean, I had somebody come up to me one year with a tough budget, and they said, "You and people like you are ruining Milford." I didn't know what to say. I said, "All by myself?" I didn't know I could do that all by myself. And as he talked to me, or yelled at me actually, I understood what he meant. We have $5.5 million of excess levy that we weren't tapping. And he thought that was terrible, that we should spend that. And the fact that we weren't spending it, he thought was horrible. It's good to have that opinion. I disagree fully. Because to me, that $5.5 million, it's $80 a million. That would be an extra $400 or $500 on your tax bill. Now, there's people in Milford who can afford that without any inconvenience, but there's a lot of people who built Milford, that kind of money, if they're living on Social Security, can mean the difference between them getting their meds and not, or cutting back on groceries, especially in this time of inflation. So you never know. Here I was thinking after town meeting, I was excited that we pulled off a budget without using profanity, that bad words like 2.5 override and debt exclusion. But yet you had people who said we should raise taxes. And a lot of them don't understand that the unused levy just means that's the amount we could spend up to without having a referendum. Town meeting could spend an extra $5 million this year just on their vote. But that extra $5 million, again, is over $400 increase in taxes. And if you're living on $1,500 or $1,800 a month Social Security, $400 or $500 is a big issue.
All right. Well, so with that, we're gonna put our results back on the screen. We were able to get our final 2 precincts reporting. So here are, again, we'll stress these are unofficial results. It's always unofficial results on election night. We will get the official results from the town clerk's office a little bit later on in the week. But here we are with all 8 precincts reporting. Let's take a look at those overall vote totals. Continuing to lead the way in the race for the school committee is Matthew Zacchilli with a total of 1,247 votes. In second place position in the school committee is Meghan Hornberger with 1,051 votes. And there you see it with all 8 precincts reporting. It is Gregory Allegrezza in the third place position with 1,027 votes. Chris Wilson is the fourth place vote getter with 974. So right now, according to our unofficial results, by a very thin margin, by a total of 53 votes, it's Gregory Allegrezza edging out Chris Wilson for a seat on the school committee.
We're fortunate that we had 4 good candidates. I'm amazed how well Greg did his first time out. And Chris has done so many good things for the town that surprising that he did not get reelected.
Yeah, it's pretty shocking. I would say, Al, we've done a lot of these election results shows together. Typically by this point in the night, things played out more or less the way that we expected. I'd say that this is one of the more surprising outcomes that we've seen.
Especially when you think about 50 votes. And that's the hardest part. If we're getting 20, 30%, which sounds like an unachievable goal, the statistics work better. When you're getting 1,600 people, or 8-9%, 50 vote swing can be, well, in this case, it's significant. You know, if these results are true, you know, and so far over the past umpteen years they have been, there may be a vote or two plus or minus, but the overall numbers usually stick. I want to say thank you to Chris Wilson for everything he's done for this town, for all the good he's done, for all the time he puts in, and also for Greg Allegrezza, because a lot of people know or didn't know that he served on the police chief's selection committee. It was a pleasure to be on that committee this time, because after hearing about all the discussions that were held on the previous police chief selection committee, I was absolutely pleased that there was no politics, no arm twisting, and it went really smooth. Paul Zacchilli, as chairman, kept the conversations on track and efficient. So again, Chris, thank you for everything you've done. Hopefully this is a small gap and you'll come back next year and take a seat back.
Yeah, I would certainly echo those sentiments, and you know, we've had a chance to work with Chris very closely over the years. Chris served as a member of our Milford TV board, as our school committee representative for a period of time as well. So we know how committed Chris is to this community, and just how involved Chris is. Of course, also a member of the planning board as well. Just cares about this town, wants to be involved, wants to give back, and so again, certainly a surprising result to see him on the outside looking in, but at the same time, a credit to Gregory Allegrezza for running a good campaign, for really getting himself out there, gaining a lot of traction, and so he ended up as the third highest vote getter. But again, it ended up being close in the end. 1,051 votes for Meghan Hornberger for the second place position, just a couple of votes ahead in the end of Allegrezza. And you know, we've seen a lot of first-time candidates for school committee come out, especially in recent years. It's been a trend of a lot of newcomers out in I would say the last 2 or 3 years especially. And a lot of times we see that first year is a learning experience. We typically see lower vote numbers, and once those candidates start coming back for maybe a second time or a third time, we really start to see that positive momentum.
That snowball builds up.
Right. But this again, it's a credit to Greg to be able to get out there so quickly and be able to get over 1,000 votes. That's not something that we've seen very often. But again, you know, also voter turnout playing a role, and this kind of takes us back to our theme of the night, where if you're curious just how important every single vote is in a local election like this, you just take a look at these results, where 53 votes determined the outcome of a seat on the school committee that will be making some very, very important decisions here moving forward for all of the kids throughout the Milford Public Schools. But once again, we'll just roll through those results one more time. So again, your top 3 vote getters for school committee are Matthew Zacchilli, Meghan Hornberger, and Gregory Allegrezza. Those are your 3 projected winners in the school committee race. In the Board of Health, it is Lorianne Braza, the projected winner there, with a total of 902 votes. Diana Haynes, the number 2 vote getter in that race at 665, and then Charles Scaff at 229. And then in the race for the 1 contested seat on the trustees of Vernon Grove Cemetery, it is Paul Bosclair winning that, is the projected winner, I should say, with 888 total votes there, with now all 8 precincts reporting. And as you mentioned, Al, these are unofficial results on election night. By the time we get the official results, maybe in another day or two, we might see some fluctuation of a vote or two. I have never seen it to be enough of a discrepancy to overturn the results on election night. So we do certainly expect all of these results to hold up.
And again, I mean, Lorianne Braza, the name means a lot, because the Braza, I mean, when we did the cemetery, it was the Brazas that stepped in to put us over the top. We've done so many projects where the Brazas, Paul and his father, came in and helped. So it doesn't go unnoticed when your family chips in and helps out the town. And obviously, I don't think it went unnoticed tonight. Charlie Scaff graduated Milford, 74. You know, again, you're looking at people who have been involved. And again, for the school committee, the one good thing is I think people were voting for one of the 4 candidates, not against anybody. Because I can't think of one thing that Chris Wilson did that would cause people to vote against him. I can think of Greg being on the police chief selection committee, giving his time for that, that would help him get recognition. I can think of the families that are involved. But there wasn't like one candidate with, oh my God, it's the Holland family. Oh my God, it's the Zacchilli family. Because there were 3 different major families of Milford. Interesting results.
A fascinating night. It's always interesting to see these results come in real time. And so we'll continue to get these results out there. We'll share all of the projected winners out on our social media platforms. We'll, of course, recap everything to do with Milford's local election on our next edition of the Milford Informer in a couple of weeks as well. But again, just a fascinating election night draws to a close. So again, we'll share with you our projected winners one final time. It's Zacchilli, Hornberger, and Allegrezza, your projected winners for school committee. It is Braza, your projected winner for Board of Health, and Clare, your projected winner for the trustees of Vernon Grove Cemetery. There are all of your projected winners there. It's just one winner for the Board of Health race. That is Lorian Braza, just one seat up for grabs there for that Board of Health, with 3 seats on the school committee and 1 contested seat that we've been following for the trustees of Vernon Grove Cemetery. So again, we'll get all of that out there on our social media channels for you. And Al, any closing thoughts here as we wind down on the night?
I think the closing thoughts, if I can make a plug, is I've always said I won't ask anybody to vote for a particular candidate. I don't think it's my place. I don't think it's anybody who is trying to inform the population here in Milford to pick a candidate and push for him. But I will beg you, please consider voting next time. I mean, we've had it where 13 votes made the difference of a school committee member years ago, and I was hoping we'd never see something that close. Tonight, we're at the same place. Not that I wanted either way to go, but 50 votes is going to put somebody in a chair for 3 years to influence, because there's only 7 school committee members. So one vote can make a huge difference on the direction and the spending. And I'm not saying it was good or bad, but please consider getting out to vote. And if you're lazy like me sometimes, call Amy. 508-634-2307, not that I know that number by heart. If you can't make it to the Portuguese Club, if you can't make it to the Senior Center or the Italian Vets, do it by mail. But get your vote in. Because somebody once said, if you don't vote, don't complain about the result.
Very wise words, great words to close out the night. So again, we hope to see that that voter turnout percentage higher for next year's local election when we're here 1 year from now recapping more results. But in the meantime, again, congratulations to all of your winners on the night here tonight. Again, if you can see our winners on the screen one final time. Projected winners for school committees: Zacchilli, Hornberger, and Allegrezza. Braza, the projected winner for Board of Health, and Clare, the projected winner for the trustees of Vernon Grove Cemetery. So that's going to bring an end to this election season. It's going to bring an end to our live election night coverage here tonight. Once again, I want to give a sincere thank you to all of our Milford TV team who came together to make this coverage possible tonight. Patrick Garapi directing tonight's coverage, also bringing you the updates in real time in all of our vote total graphics for the night here tonight. Sophia, our Sutton High School intern, helping out in the control room as well, and all of our poll watchers watchers who are braving the elements out there, getting you the vote totals tonight. Our member services coordinator, Dominique Champa, our intrepid volunteer helping us out tonight as well, Devere Blander. We appreciate him joining our Milford TV team on the coverage tonight. And one final time, a huge thank you to Jerry McLeeta, leaving us after tonight, his final night as a Milford TV staff member, and once again going above and beyond to make sure we had all 8 precincts accounted for in our coverage tonight. So from all of our Milford TV team and for Al Correa, I am Tim Coet. Thank you so much for watching. Have a great night, everybody.